Auburn is the outright champion of the SEC, and Dave Shumate is ecstatic about it. Welcome on into the Auburn Express, powered by the War Corps. I'm your host, Mike Z, and thank you so much for making the Auburn Express your listen this afternoon. Joining me as he does every single week is my good friend Dave Shumate from SEC Unfiltered. We're talking power rankings, Dave, as we do every single week on this show. Let's jump into it. Last week, you had Auburn 1, you had Florida 2, you had Bama 3, you had Tennessee 4, Missouri 5, A&M 6, Kentucky 7, and State at 8. Now, I'm not going to pay too much attention to the bottom of these rankings because, quite frankly, they don't matter. Ole Miss at 9, Vanderbilt at 10. After that, we can just kind of move on. But so many good storylines I want to talk to you about here this week. We have some movement, not at the top. But, boy, did we get a really good weekend of basketball in the SEC. Auburn 1, Florida 2, Bama 3, Tennessee 4. Nothing's changed there. And Tennessee fans maybe not so happy about it.
That's a nice way of putting it there, Mike.
Missouri at 5. Vanderbilt jumps up to 6 here.
Biggest mover.
Yeah, the biggest mover from 10 in your rankings. We also got A&M at 7. They took the L this weekend. Kentucky obviously lost to Auburn. State at 9. So they drop a spot in your rankings this week. Ole Miss drops from 9 to 10. And again, the back of the rankings pretty much as is. Like Georgia moved up, Arkansas moved back a spot. And then that bottom 4, Oklahoma, Texas, LSU, and South Carolina. However, South Carolina pulling out the win versus Arkansas. Let's jump into this. So many things happening. I want to skip over the obvious, Dave, and let's get to what these rankings are this week. You kept Tennessee ranked behind Bama, even though they pulled off the game winner. Bama made some critical mistakes down the stretch in that game that left an opening for Tennessee. Credit to Rick Barnes' squad for being able to take advantage of those mistakes. The rebound on the free throw and the foul, that really just had my head in a tailspin there. But he had to hit pretty much a half-court shot to win it. We all know the rippling effects of that make. But why Tennessee still behind Bama after they take the head-to-head?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we're looking at this from a 30-plus game resume, big picture perspective, especially this week, outside of Vanderbilt moving up some spots. But again, me and you talked a little bit off air. I think that 6 through 10 spot, you toss those teams up, it wouldn't shot. You're probably going wherever the game's played, let's be honest. But for Bama being ahead of Tennessee still, I feel like if you watch the game, Bama kept them at arm's length most of the way. And again, I think this is another difference of what makes a team like Auburn special. I think if Auburn had Tennessee down 8-9 late, like an 8-9 point deficit late, I think Auburn goes on like a 6-0, 8-0 run and puts it away. I think it's kind of in Auburn's DNA. They're going to go, hey, we got your foot on your throat. We're about to end it. I think Bama lacks a little bit of that this year. That would concern me if I was an Alabama fan from a perspective of in the tournament. Can't let teams linger, especially when you play at the pace Alabama plays because they're giving extra shots consistently. I just think overall you watch these two teams, I think Alabama's better than. I think this is a series they would play. I'm not going to let one game in Knoxville where it came down to the very end where you felt like Alabama lost it more than Tennessee won it. And again, give complete credit to Tennessee. Again, it's kind of the DNA of Rick Barnes. You're right. You brought it up, Mike. Does a phenomenal job. Tennessee fans sometimes get after Rick Barnes unfairly. I think he's kind of underappreciated. If you just like finishing in the top 4 of the SEC every year, I guess you wouldn't like that. But I think Rick Barnes, to his credit, I think where Bama messed up in that game a little bit was not taking advantage in the first half when Zakai Ziegler was on the bench with 2 fouls, picked up 2 early 2 fouls. That's when Bama could have kind of taken advantage. I didn't think Bama played bad outside of shooting free throws poorly. I mean, Tennessee did too. They could say the same thing. I just think that last 35 seconds, you're up 4, 35 seconds. Let's call a spade a spade. I mean, Nate Oates accepted it in the press conference. that was coaching. I'm not going to go malpractice, but that lost the game at the end. That's where Hal Jaron Stevenson, your worst rebounder on free throws, is on the low block. Again, I know Nate, you go back and watch it, was trying to get Clifford and Morey in, but to be fair to the official, it was a little late. So he didn't accept the substitution. So that's got to be ahead. You have 2 timeouts on the inbound play. I don't know how you don't call that at some point. Somebody, Nate Oates, LeBaron Philon's got to call that. Again, down the stretch, you failed. I don't know. Big picture, I still like Alabama better than Tennessee. Is there a gap? Hell no. Heck no. No, I just think if you're making me take 2 teams on a neutral floor, and this is how I look at it, is a neutral floor, I would take Alabama over Tennessee on a neutral floor. I just think, again, we're splitting hairs. I know the game just happened, but I'll say this. Are we going to put Florida ahead of Auburn? Do we think Florida's better than Auburn? Florida beat Auburn. Or do we think Ole Miss is better than Alabama? Ole Miss beat Alabama. It's one game on the home floor of Tennessee. I think Bama had them arms length most of the time, but Tennessee, give them credit. You got to finish. You got to play 40 minutes. Alabama didn't play the last 35 seconds. It ended up costing them the game.
The pushback that you're going to get here is about how much does head-to-head really matter, right? And I think that is the thing that most fans are going to point to. They're going to say, well, if we play head-to-head and we beat you, we're better than you. And you make a good point about the coaching malpractice, but at what point, Chris, do you factor that malpractice in to how a team may end up at the end of the day? If your coach can't get his team in the right call at the end, if he can't get his team to execute at the ends of games, at what point when we're projecting out rankings do we say, you know what? I think Nate Oates may be a liability in crunch time in terms of how he's calling plays for his team at the end of games.
Yeah, but I'll say they've won other close games. I think that's more of the exception than the rule.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I could say the same thing about Bruce. I thought Bruce Pearl last year against Alabama, the one in Tuscaloosa, kept Janai Broome on the bench a little too long. So I think they all had – I think Bruce even said that in the postgame. So I think we can always one-off, especially 30-plus basketball games. Yeah, you're going to screw up something, I think, as a coach. So I do think it's a one-off. Again, is it acceptable? No, it was a big game. You could have – you probably clinch a 1 seed winning that if you're Alabama. Instead, though, you have a Tennessee team at home that you have them on the ropes. You got to finish the deal. Again, Tennessee's a great team. Let me say that. They're a good team. I don't think Tennessee's great, but I think they are a good team. And on the road, it's going to be tough. And you got to play the full 40 minutes as they understood. But I know I don't think that's like a Nate Oates is a liability there. I think it's just a one-off. You screwed up. I think they'll learn from it. I guess the positive is if that happened in the NCAA tournament, you'd be totally sick to your stomach because you're not playing another game. I mean, you're still – have 2 games regular season, SEC tournament, and postseason. But no, I wouldn't say it's a liability yet because it's the first time I've seen it all year.
Yeah. Great point, I think. And I think it's a good point you make about Florida and Auburn. Yes, Florida beat Auburn. However, I don't
think anyone who has 2 eyes watches basketball. But man, neutral floor, I'm taking Florida over Auburn. I mean, I know they won at Auburn, but I mean, Auburn's definitely a more consistent and better team throughout the season.
Yeah, look, I think the game still scares you if you're an Auburn fan, right? Like playing Florida, knowing what they can do, right? But at the end of the day, they played the only kind of game, and Todd Golden said this after in the post game I was in there. He said, we played the only kind of game we could have played to walk in here and walk out with a win. They shot out of their minds, and Auburn had to come back. Yeah. Right. And they still put up 80. Auburn still scored 81 points in that game.
Yeah.
Now, I said this when Auburn played Alabama. I said, look, guys, Auburn held Alabama under their averages, but it should still worry you that they were able to put up 85 points on 39% shooting.
Yeah.
That's the team that can score and that should worry anybody.
Mike, you make a great point to Todd Golden's point. It's like kind of like, no, like we aren't going to play like this every night, guys. Like this was our ceiling, and that's what it's going to take to beat Auburn. Shoot, probably not even just here on a neutral floor, and that's where a lot of teams have to go beat Auburn now. Outside of what Alabama's got 1 game left at Auburn.
Yeah. Like so many, like I said, compelling storylines. It's remarkable where the SEC is at this year. Obviously, we keep saying it over and over again. This may be the best single season any conference has ever had in the history of college basketball. again, analysts, pundits alike, everybody seems to agree that this is remarkable what we're watching here. But Dave, kind of moving on into the rest of the SEC, Missouri drops to Vanderbilt. Now, you know how I feel about Missouri. You know how I talk about Missouri. These guys, to me, are frauds. I got them up there with Ole Miss in terms of most likely to embarrass the SEC in the tournament. But does this win versus Missouri propel Vandy clearly into the conversation in terms of just solidly in the tournament? I think the SEC has 10 in right now.
I agree.
But beyond that, I think maybe 2 more from the conference.
Georgia, and then after that, it would probably be. I think Texas and Oklahoma. I mean, Oklahoma's definitely done now, but I think Texas will figure. I think they'll lose to Mississippi State midweek, and it's over for them. And then Arkansas has got to get one. I mean, I think Georgia will get one. You're right. It'll be 1 or 2 more. I think Vanderbilt's in, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to take a look back at the rankings. I want to pull the rankings back up here. Again, Auburn at 1. We know that already. Florida at 2. Alabama at 3. Tennessee at 4. Again, this is where it gets interesting for me. If you're Kentucky, you drop that game there. But the other interesting one, I think the bubble one for me, is Arkansas. Now, I want to spend some time here before we move on and we talk about what Auburn has to do over the last few games. Jay Williams, I've been harping on this, went on a whole rant before the game, Dave. Jay Williams went on a whole rant before the game, Dave. And he said, I think Big Z went 0 for 10 versus Auburn, and they could have won that game. And Arkansas, this is that. And then they lose by 19 points to the worst team in the SEC. Why can't this guy just give Auburn credit? Now, when you look at what has happened throughout college basketball, there are a lot of teams with questionable losses on their schedules, right? Like, why you shouldn't have lost that one? Why did you lose that one? I think Auburn is the only team in college basketball right now without a questionable loss on their schedule, right?
Oh.
You may have had some iffy wins, but no questionable losses. I would argue that Clemson lost a little bit questionable, right? Everybody's got a sketchy loss, but Auburn here, he made that. He went on a whole rant about it before the game, and then it completely fell apart, I think, in a loss to South Carolina. Look, yes, Big Z did go 0 for 10, and yes, that was an anomaly. However, Auburn had to not play well as well, too. They had guys who did not play well in that game that kept Arkansas in it. I would argue when Auburn played Florida, same thing. It was not just that Florida played out of their minds. Auburn had to have some guys come back to the field. And then the point that I was making was versus Kentucky. Janai Broome didn't hit a shot in the first half. And they went in up 15. And him and Seth both picked Kentucky to win that game. That was
I
close.
didn't understand the people. I think a decent amount of people were picking Kentucky. I was like, Kentucky's like still not back healthy. They struggle to defend. What world do we? I don't really care where it's played at. In what world do we think Kentucky's gonna win that? Auburn made me some money. They won me $50 the other day. I took Auburn in the points. I laid the points. I was like, everybody's high on Kentucky, but I was like, if there was a spot to really bet against Auburn, it'd probably be this midweek game. Just without a lot to play for.
I agree.
I was just saying that would be the spot to do it. A&M dying for some kind of win. They're on a 4-game losing streak. Like,
I don't understand it, Dave. I don't understand it. Again, Arkansas here. Look, you didn't drop them far. You moved them from 11 to 12 in your rankings this week. But they're a team that I do think they are talented. They gave a lot of people a run for their money. But they have not come out on the right side of a lot of those games. And at the end of the day, results still have to matter. You know what I mean?
It's a very thin roster. Very thin. They're banged. Big Z's banged up still.
Oh, man.
Hero's banged up. But we know Boogie's out for the year. It's kind of helped them. But still, it's a body remember, Cal only brought in 9 scholarship players at the beginning of the year. It's a pretty small roster, short roster to start the year. And you're inevitably going to have injuries. And we see that. They need one more win. I don't know. Can they do it? I mean, they got they got Mississippi State, and who they got midweek? Who is it again? I'm looking it up now. Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, and they hosted at Vanderbilt and Mississippi State at home.
Yeah. I think you got to win both those games if you're Arkansas. But going into the Auburn Kentucky game, it just felt like a lot of people were resting on irrelevant history when in picking Kentucky. Yes, Auburn hadn't won at Rupp since 1988. I just didn't think that was relevant.
What's that have to do with these two teams?
Yeah.
That's always a trendy stat in sports. If they hadn't won there in 40 years, it's like, well, shoot, these guys weren't even alive when that streak started.
Doesn't matter.
What's that have to do with this team?
Yeah, it doesn't matter to this coach. Didn't matter to these players. I quite honestly, I don't think it mattered to Kentucky. I think what mattered was they had an opportunity to knock off the number one team in the country at home, and they missed it, and that was it. I don't think that the streak that they had at Rupp mattered to them. I think they wanted to start a streak of one this year and beating Auburn, and they missed that opportunity. So, for Arkansas, we're going to continue to keep an eye on the Arkansas situation. I think they are firmly on the bubble, and their chances, they're a team that needs to win their last two. I'm standing by this. I don't think there's anything they can do in the SEC tournament outside of winning it outright that will help them, because the committee has told us week in and week out, you are what your regular season says you are every year. Right. So
I think definitely for seeding purposes, I feel like you can play your way in or off the bubble, but they're like open to that. But seeding, as we saw last year with Auburn, didn't even move a single.
Doesn't help you. Doesn't help you at all.
If you're in the tournament going in, it's almost just like it's kind of an exhibition out here. Again, winning the SEC tournament, there's something to be fired up of. It's cool to say that, but it's also is it worth potential injuries?
Yeah, didn't help Auburn at all last year move off of a 4 seed. Right?
No.
Like it didn't.
And think about it too. Alabama lost in the first round, or the quarters on Friday night and stayed at a 4.
Yeah, crazy.
Didn't matter.
Yeah, didn't matter at all. But look, the Auburn Tigers are cooking, and you should be too with our friends at Golden's Cast Iron. Visit goldenscastiron.com/WR. Use code TWR for $65 off fire pits and Kamado grills. My dad has the Kamado grill, just a great product. And code get your weight up for 15% off your weights. Get to working out this spring with our friends at Golden's Cast Iron. They're helping you serve up not only good food, but memories with the family around the grill. We appreciate them for sponsoring the segment. Also, the segment is brought to you by the Rogue Shop. Visit rogueshop.com and use code report to get 15% off your Rogue Shop order. SEC tournament is coming. NCAA tournament is coming. Help keep your cool with Rogue Shop. They have something. Pain, sleep, stress, anxiety, whatever ails you in life, the Rogue Shop has something that has you covered. And last but certainly not least, I want to thank our brand new sponsor, the Vibe Vault. If you are in the Phoenix City area and you're looking for a good cut, Dave, the Vibe Vault is the spot for you. You can find them at 3462 Crosswinds Road, Sweet Eye in Phoenix City, Alabama. That's right on Highway 431 across from Chattahoochee Valley Community College. Brand new shopping center over there. Brand new barber shop. Mr. Steve has been my barber for a while. So if you're looking at the crispy line and you're saying, I want a crispy line like Mike G, the Vibe Vault has you covered. Again, 3462 Crosswinds Road, Sweet Eye, Phoenix City, Alabama on 431. Please go visit them. We appreciate them for sponsoring this segment. Look, the Auburn Tigers had clinched outright with 2 games left. They are the regular season champions. I told my good friend Doug Amos over at ESPN, I said, Doug, the outright matters this year more than it's ever mattered. Winning this one outright just means more, but they needed some help to get there. Now, we knew that a win against Kentucky would secure a co-share, but they needed a Bama loss, and Tennessee delivered. Just a phenomenal moment in college basketball. So many mistakes by Bama down the stretch. I don't even it's hard to compute what we watched there. But Tennessee pulls off the win. And the Auburn Tigers had just gotten back to the Plains, and they were watching. Here's what that moment looked like. Auburn social media captured it for us.
We ain't sharing.
We ain't sharing. Put it on a t-shirt. The Auburn Tigers are not sharing the regular season crown. They clinch it outright with some help from the Volunteers. Just a fantastic moment. But this puts Auburn in a situation I don't even think Bruce Pearl thought he would find himself in, the way this season was going, in that you have clinched it outright. And obviously momentum is something that you want to keep. And if you're Auburn, you're deep. So it's not like you're going to field a team of scrubs over the last two games. But certainly you're thinking about load management over these last two games, Dave?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about it off air. You know, Auburn experienced it last year. Like, I don't think Auburn solely lost to Yale because they won the SEC championship on Sunday, a couple like 4 days before. I don't think it specifically was because of that, but I'm sure it attributed to it. So, I mean, again, in Bruce and them this year, I mean, you really have nothing to gain going. I think you're going to you have the number one seed locked up. I mean, just playing for pride to go win, sweep the league this year, which when I say sweep, win the regular season and go win the SEC tournament. Not a lot of teams do that. And I think that would help cement them as arguably one of the best SEC teams of all time this year. Now maybe you take on that challenge that's like, all right, we can fully submit this, which I think they are in that conversation already. But is that worth, like you said, Denver Jones already with the bone bruise, is that worth Todd Pettiford playing more minutes? And maybe let's hope tonight, let's pray he doesn't, but something happens to him, he gets some lingering injury and you play 4 or 5 days later. So you're right. I don't know. Again, there's probably no right answer. No coach is ever going to go to a press conference. Like, we're going to be on a load management this week. I mean, Bruce wouldn't say that. No coach is going to come out and say that. But you'll be able to tell. I mean, maybe it's something, Mike, like this. Maybe if you're up or down double digits with about 4 to 6 minutes left, maybe you wouldn't go sub Janai in like you may to go like, hey, in a regular season game, or obviously the NCAA tournament when your season's on it, maybe go sub him in to maybe like, hey, we got to go make a late push to get back in this thing. Maybe you don't do that in this and you just kind of like, let's go let Chaney and Dylan play out there. Let's just, again, if we win, awesome. If not, it could be worse. We're fine. Like, I don't know. That's the way someone else asked me out on a show one time. I was like, that's probably the only way you could maybe see it. If they were up or big, like maybe Auburn beats up 30, they put Janai. He didn't even play the last 10 minutes of the second half or something like that. Maybe it's something like that. Maybe he wouldn't anyways. But that's probably the only way you could really deter. And again, I think a lot of these coaches do take the SEC tournament serious. I think they all really do appreciate it. I mean, it's going to be hard as hell to win it this year.
Yeah, it is. Look, I think that you want to keep your stars warm. And this is maybe one of the perils of the SEC tournament, is that you secure that bye. And then those teams that play those first 2 games come in hot and ready to go. And maybe if you have a cold start to the game, they take you by surprise. And before you know it, you're down and you can't come back. But, I think it's how Alabama goes out to Mississippi State. I don't think anybody will argue that Mississippi State was a better team than Alabama last year. But they did get put out of the SEC tournament by Mississippi State. And it happens. So if you're Bruce Pearl, in my book, you just want to play your guys enough to help keep the feel of the game under their skin headed into that first round of the NCAA tournament, if that makes sense. The regular season sweep of Bama definitely still matters. So before
that
game.
Yeah, because I mean, traditionally, both teams don't do that a lot. I mean, the last sweep was 2 years ago, Alabama. So, Brandon Miller and them. And then last year they split. So like you said, the sweep for both those teams doesn't usually happen. Like you said, it would only add to the accolades of what this team already has: a Maui Invitational Tournament championship, an SEC regular season title.
Incredible.
The sweep of Bama would be mad. I mean, add that to that. And then who knows about the SEC tournament? Then we obviously know what their end goal is come mid-March here in about 2 weeks.
Yeah. You just have so many opportunities if you're Auburn, I think, to set yourself up well for the first round of the NCAA tournament. And now it's increasingly looking like they're going to end up in Lexington for that first round, Dave. Obviously, the Sweet 16 is in Atlanta, so you get to stay very regional for the first.
You're within what?
Yeah, man, I'm telling you. Fans are going to show up. So I think this is great for college basketball. Both Auburn and Alabama found themselves in the precarious situation of being in Spokane for the first round. Now, I was there.
Birmingham the year before that.
Yeah, against Houston, and they lost to Houston.
They both were there. Yeah, I've seen some people project Bama's playing in the first round in Lexington too. Now again, we got games that could change, but yeah, it'd be wild. It'd be 3 straight years in a row. Bama and Auburn have been at the
same regions. Nuts. But if you're Auburn, again, you have everything's working in your favor this year, I think, in terms of seeding, in terms of the way the schedule is played out, in terms of where you are going to land up in the first round. Bruce Pearl could not have asked for a better situation headed into an NCAA tournament than the one that he's about to get. Like I said, the only thing that would have made it any better is if the first round had been in Birmingham and the second round in Atlanta somehow, and then, the third round in Nashville, for the Final Four. That I don't know if anything like that's ever happened. But if you're Bruce Pearl, the chips are falling here, and you've got to get it done this year. You have to get it done. I think anything short of a Final Four run for this team is a failure of a season. You cannot have a regular season like this and not make a run to the Final Four. If you're not going to do it this year, what year are you going to do it? Right? Yeah. 2018, 2019 is ancient history. We loved that team if you're an Auburn fan. However, it's been a long time since then, and you've had some really good players. You've had Walker Kessler, Jabari Smith, Sharif Cooper, Isaac Okoro. You've had first round, you've had top 5 picks since then, Dave.
You're right. It feels like what year was it? 21, 22 team? Yeah, with Walker Kessler and Jabari Smith. That was the team. It was the last that kind of underachieved. It should have went further with it. Second round in Miami.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, look, and Miami was a senior-laden team. A lot of jokes about the age of this team. Alabama has 4 starters right now older than Janai Broome. I mean,
I don't understand either people making fun of it or if people take it that person. I was like, I don't really. It's a compliment too.
You got to keep them around.
Yeah, no, I mean the older basketball teams win in March.
They do, and I will say this: after Auburn won their last home game, John Calipari said this. Calipari said it. And who was it that came to Auburn literally right before they went on the road?
It was Arkansas. Bama wasn't there. Was it Rick Barnes? Was it Tennessee? And then were there not long ago.
I'm going to edit this.
Ole Miss, Chris Beard. Was it Chris Beard?
Chris Beard? Yeah. Chris Beard commented and said that he feels like part of the strength of the league, what contributed to the strength of the league this year was so many good players returning.
Agree.
Because of NIL. And so you had all these great players that came back to college basketball this year to play. And you're seeing a lot of senior-laden, mature teams.
And it's good for the league. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, right. Yeah. When Auburn was last number 1, Jabari Smith was a true freshman, and he was your best player. And when he couldn't carry Auburn as a true freshman, Auburn struggled. And this year, Todd Pettiford, nobody's arguing how talented this kid is, Dave. But he doesn't have to carry Auburn the way Jabari had to.
The weight of the team isn't on him. Yeah.
Yeah, he gets to go out and just play and be free and have a good time and hit big shots like he's been doing his whole basketball career. So
no, you're right.
This is such a fascinating season, I think, for the conference. The SEC, Greg Sankey, they asked member institutions to invest in basketball, and I think that the institutions stepped up to the plate. And basketball is phenomenal. And now you've got the best football conference, you've got the best basketball conference, you've got the best basketball coaches, some of the best basketball coaches. And it's just got to start to produce championships for the league, because there's nothing that I think Greg Sankey wants more to start hanging banners in basketball as well, too. For as many as they've hung on the football side, boy, you'll never be able to get him to be quiet if they start hanging them in basketball. So certainly this is going to be fun to watch. Dave, closing thoughts, man. What do you see here down the stretch? Give me a prediction.
Give me a specific one.
Give me a prediction. Give me SEC tournament winner. Who wins the
SEC tournament? Oh, shoot. Let's go to the SEC tournament. Let's go to the Brad. Well, I'm not going to waste this show's time on that. I'll give you a prediction there. Closing thoughts. I think it'll be interesting to see who, like you talked about, Mike, who gets that last 1 seed and then from the SEC. I think we got Auburn obviously locked in. I think Duke's locked in. I think Houston's locked in. We talked about it. I think Bama, Florida, Wednesday night. That's the game probably. Let's be honest. I mean, we got Bama, Auburn, but Auburn's already wrapped up the league. I think from like a mattering standpoint, That's probably the biggest game of the week. Like from the loser of that, I think is out of the one conversation. It's probably going to end up being two. Winner sets himself up really good to be a 1 seed though. So I think that's key. Watch that. Where do these 6 through 10 type of teams that I have in my power rankings finish? You got like the Vandies. I'd even throw Missouri in there. Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Kentucky. Where do those teams kind of – can Georgia go get one more win? They need to probably do it in Columbia, which has been a tough place to play. That's something to watch. Does the SEC get 11 or 12 in? You mentioned that earlier. Prediction for the SEC tournament. I mean, I'll probably be on next week and we get the real bracket. But out of this one right now, I mean, dude, I have to know what's Auburn's strategy going into it. Like, if Auburn's like locked in, like we want to win this thing, they're definitely the hands-on favorite to do it.
Okay, all right.
I don't know. I kind of like Florida. Florida may have a little bit of that chip on their shoulder coming into it of, hey, let's go try to get a 1. And also, we lost the championship of this last year.
Yeah,
let's go win it.
You know, I think that it will be interesting to hear from the coaches if they think that a run will help their seeding chances. So if you're Florida or Bama, I do think that you're at least in a position to give the committee a chance to break precedent and factor, Friday, Saturday results for those two teams into their decision, because we know that they're making that decision around like noon 1 on Saturday.
Yeah.
The SEC has their championship game on Monday. The Big 12 moved their championship game to Saturday for this reason, because
SEC's what, Sunday at 1 or so. It's right.
Yeah. The decision's made a lot of times by that time.
Another thing to watch this year, Mike, is it's no more just 2 games on Sad Wednesday now. With obviously us adding Oklahoma and Texas in. Now you got 4 games, and you could have some bubble. Like, does Arkansas have some things like you said, just teams like Arkansas and Georgia, can they improve on anything going in there? Texas, what if Texas went on a little bit of a run and won 2 games in that thing as they set with like 6 conference wins? I don't know. Again, we haven't had that in the SEC in a while. Or again, we've had teams like Auburn who are locks going into the SEC tournament as NCAA tournament bids last year, obviously. But they went in as a 4 seed in the NCAA tournament projection and picked up 3 quality wins and didn't move a seed line. I mentioned Alabama last year, came in as a 4, lost to Florida on Friday night, didn't drop a seed line. Like it was almost like this doesn't matter. Well, if you're already, it's almost like, to me, they told us over the last few years, Mike, if you're in the tournament, you can't improve your seed. You can play your way in or out. You can't improve your seed. That's kind of what I've picked up on them.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's been pretty clear. You are what you are going in. Right. So maybe you can move off the bubble, maybe. Right. But that's almost like improving your seed. Like you have to be firmly inside the bubble, I think, for it to matter. So it's going to be interesting to see how these teams play it out. There's still a lot to play for if you're Bama and Florida. And I think that's what I want to close the show on is these teams are still playing for quite a bit, because trust me, if you're Alabama, you want that 1 seed. And I don't think Alabama wants to end up in the same bracket with Auburn. Right. Like, if you have a chance to go to what was it, Raleigh is the other kind of like Southern region first round site. You take that. Drive's about the same, I think. And you move on from there. So you want the easiest pass possible to Atlanta. That's what you want.
Right.
That's what you want if you're these teams. And Florida and Alabama still have that on the line. Tennessee obviously is in that mix as well, too, with the big win over Bama. We'll see how the committee treats this. Dave Shumate from SEC Unfiltered. A little bit of a long one, but lots to talk about. Dave, before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, give me the follow at Dave Shumate SEC, and you'll give us the subscribe on the SEC Unfiltered YouTube channel, guys. Again, I think the best SEC entity around for the big 3 sports of football, men's basketball, and baseball, pairing up here with the best Auburn entity around with our guy Mike G and the boys over at the War Report. So, Mike, I appreciate you having me on, brother. Can't wait to we'll break down the SEC tournament next week.
We will be. I'll be there in Nashville for it. So hopefully I'll see you there. Guys, that's it for another great edition of the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. If you want more content like this, please hit like and subscribe. We are the War Report on every social media platform. TW Report on TikTok. Signing off, and as always, Warrior.